Hello, and welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nut, an online radio show and podcast focused on national security, policy, politics, and selfless service. We're here to give you an honest opinion, a different perspective, and hopefully a few laughs. We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our own perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on our chat room, via our Facebook page, and of course, on Twitter. Keep it funky. That's right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Stu and the Nun here on November 29th, the end of November. Thanksgiving's over. The leftovers are either eaten up or thrown away, and you are back with us after taking last week off. You got Stu here, and to my side, you see we have Nun with a very special guest tonight, and I'll let Nun take it from here.
Good evening, everybody. The Nun here in Georgetown, Texas, in what we like to call the Central Texas Studio, also known as the world headquarters of Warrior Media Solutions, Veteran Outdoors, and Graybeard Publishing. Check out www.booksbyveterans.com. Big shout out to our sponsors. Enlisted 9 Fight Company is always representing. You are wearing it tonight. I had to be suited up, so I'm rocking a collar for a change. But Enlisted 9 you can find at 9line, 9lineapparel.com. Always rocking the Veteran Outdoor hats. And then our other sponsor that we're proud to represent is Road Armor. Check out www.roadarmor.com. Find a dealer near you to get all the great bumpers and brakes. They don't do brakes, but they do bumpers, lights, roll cages, all that cool stuff for your off-road vehicle. But tonight, kind of cool thing happened. While in the midst of everything, I believe, was it Scotty was going to be on the show tonight,
yep,
and then had to bail out. Scott Kesterson, always great to hear from that fine American. While at one of our favorite locations, Mesquite Creek Outfitters.
I almost wore that hat. I almost wore my Mesquite Creek hat tonight.
Oh, yeah.
It's that close.
While at Mesquite Creek Outfitters, hanging out with, one of my partners in crime and partners in life there. Not life partner, partners in life.
About to say.
Cody introduced me to Lieutenant Colonel, Texas National Guard, T. Patcher,
Cool.
Ken White. And Ken White's got a program that he's engaged in. He's still active duty, getting ready to retire in a little bit. He's a young man. He's still got a couple good miles to go. But he has got a wonderful program that we're going to talk about here in a second. But I'm going to let you talk for a few while I handle some social media stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, again, everyone, welcome to our show. We took last week off. We hope you enjoyed time with family and friends like we did, and or spent some time out in the woods hunting like I did. I don't know if Toby got out. He hunts a lot. But, we were out there dropping bucks left and right in upstate New York. And I am coming to you from our typical upstate northern studio here in New York, watching my Sabres on a possible 11-game winning streak, and enjoying the nice 30-something degree weather up here with about a few inches of snow out there. Something Toby does not have in the southern studio.
But I will tomorrow when I'm in South Dakota hunting pheasant.
Yes. Yeah, you'll have it there, but that's some good hunting up there too, especially for pheasant. But yeah, so good to have you guys with us. Make sure you are, as Toby said, we got our sponsors. You see them up above us. Make sure you're telling everyone, let them know about all of our where we're out on the socials. You got it: Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, iTunes. I mean, we're all over the place. You have no excuse not to be listening or watching. Hey, if you have not, I got to re-put a post up there, but if you have not watched or listened to the last show we did, which was 2 weeks ago on November 15th, you need to go back and do that. Some friends of mine and family members have went and listened to it, and it was just an awesome show. It's not often you get a 98-year-old on, much less a 98-year-old that is as sharp as he was and is, and that has experienced the things that has happened in his life. It is truly a moment in history, and we're looking to have him on again. But if you go back and listen to the show from 2 weeks ago, and Mr. Paul Schillo is an interview you don't want to miss. And you want to let family and friends know. If your kids have history teachers like mine do in middle school and high school, they usually teach a lot about especially middle school. They're teaching about some of those things during World War II and that kind of stuff. Tell them to tell their teachers about it. Go back and listen to that, because it's going to give them firsthand experience, firsthand initial source or first source experience of some of the things that happened during those battles that they only read about and watch movies about. So
no. I mean, to have the opportunity to talk to one of the very first paratroop commandos of the Marine Corps, right? The original Raiders, dealing with Guadalcanal, Tarawa, where else was he at? I mean, that guy was.
Well, he was in the Sejoy Islands, the very first offensive battle of World War II. After we were.
That's right.
Pearl Harbor.
That's right. Yeah.
In the very first offensive action the United States took. Right.
Dude's like a stud. And then in terms of talking to teachers, you might want to, tune in the math teachers too.
Oh, good point.
Because after that interview, I went home and I was like, I questioned a lot of things I knew about math. And I realized I know very little.
Yes. When a 98-year-old guy gives you a math problem that he dreamed about, that he's never even taught, and it came to him in a dream, you realize you are way outside your league.
I might be outside my 10th graders league right now, but hey, absolutely one of the coolest experiences, and it's an honor and treasure of America to be able to capture and talk to these guys. I believe right now the number is 400 a day that we're losing. That's a horrible attrition rate. We just lost the oldest surviving member of Pearl Harbor at 105 last week.
Yeah.
Former guest of the show, Lauren Bruner, is getting up there. If you get the opportunity to talk to any of these guys, let your kids hear it, capture it, hold on to it, replay it, because it truly is a treasure. But we're not going to regurgitate that one. Go back and watch it. Check it out on Spreaker, iTunes, my iHeartRadio, and everything else that we're on. Go check it out on there. Download it. Subscribe on iTunes. But we're going to talk to Lieutenant Colonel White about what he's involved in. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let him explain resilientme.org. And then we're going to talk about some of the programs they currently have going and some of the programs they're trying to launch. So
right.
Ken, tell us about your program.
Appreciate it. So we're a nonprofit organization, brand new. I'm a founding member of the organization. And it's actually founded by 3 active duty officers and a civilian counselor who works here locally in Georgetown. Stood the program up as kind of my, it's one of those things that keeps you up at night, and I just had to do it. I'm just like, I'm going to go forward and put this program together. Pretty excited about it. It's community-based, so proud to actually say that we're doing it here in Georgetown. It's the perfect spot for this program. And so what is all about improving the lives of veterans. You've served in combat, I served in combat. We've been around soldiers who struggle with those symptoms from PTSD, anger management, don't like to be in crowds and groups. And so what we're doing is resiliency programs for veterans who don't necessarily feel comfortable sitting down with a counselor and talking face to face. This is another method to express those emotions and kind of get stuff in their head out and what they're experiencing and that sort of thing. And since it's facilitated through a counselor, she's able to help them in social areas that they're struggling with because of the PTSD. So our first program is in February, and it's called Healing Through Art. It's an 8-week program. The participants are going to meet for 2 hours a Saturday for 8 consecutive Saturdays in a row. And so we're pretty pumped up about it. And we're actually here. The reason I met you is Mesquite Creek Outfitters was gracious enough to host us for a fundraiser that we put together, trying to raise money for our first program here in February.
Who are those guys that are always letting people in? Mesquite Creek. Who are those guys?
They'll let anybody in. I'll tell you. No, that's awesome. Hey, I got a real quick question for you, Ken. Is this the facilitations? Is it done by someone that's a school trained, licensed kind of person, or is it by someone that is but also has experience, or how does that?
So this particular counselor, Betty Naylor, she works here locally at a hospital. She also has her own business, but we won't use anyone other than a licensed counselor moving forward with any of our programs. And programs are completely free. But yes, she's a licensed counselor. She does expressive arts, which expressive arts is art, could be mask making in this case for this particular program, but expressive arts is a pretty broad range of activities, from art to music to writing, yoga actually, a lot of different things. What I've learned over the last couple of years, I'm involved in a couple other organizations for veterans, but what I've learned is that it's not a one-size-fits-all to help these veterans and service members. My thing is music. I'm a drummer. I love music, and that's kind of my outlet. Other people, it's lifting weights. And so what we're trying to do is just develop programs that appeal to a lot of different veterans. Williamson County has about 50,000 veterans living in Williamson County. So there's a great potential to help a lot of veterans and service members. And we also want to extend these programs out for the family members as well, because if you're having issues and you're struggling with those symptoms of PTSD, it's not only affecting you, but it's affecting your wife or your husband and your children as well, because you're with them every day.
So, just for those of you tuning in that, aren't in the Texas area, which a lot of our audience base aren't, the Williamson County is the bordering county to Bell County, which houses the largest military installation in the free world, Fort Hood, Texas. And that's why we have a lot of retirees here. We have a lot of people on active duty that live here. And that's one of the reasons, kind of like San Antonio, it's kind of like this epicenter and this hotbed, for these things. It's wonderful to have this right here because it while it's we could say it's small and modest, it's going to service a broader capacity and people can, take it with them as they go. You touched on something a few moments ago. I want to kind of rewind and circle back to it. For guys and gals that spend the majority of their adult life working in cohesive units, when we separate, we don't like going back to groups that are unfamiliar to us.
Right.
And which is like counterintuitive in a lot of ways. And when you're so used to being part of a unit, where the most important term, like, what was the most important thing that the Sergeant Major was concerned with us about as leaders, Troy? Esprit de corps, right? Like Sergeant Major is the morale officer, right? Like,
right.
And and we get out and we find ourselves alienating. We find ourselves not wanting to be in group settings, and a lot of us are very dominant in personality. Some people can say alpha types or A types or whatever. But you sit in these group settings and it's tough because you immediately look at the guy next to you and you think how much heavier was your rucksack, and you start having this like contest amongst yourselves about service, and you're trying to validate your own service based on the comparison to the guy next to you. And in a lot of these situations, my man here he's an armor branch, so he's home team. He's like the combat side, and we find, Troy, exactly what I'm talking about. We'll find ourselves in a setting and you're going to have like a softer skill MOS, and I'm not disparaging them. What I'm saying is, their experience is different.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's from the day you walk in, right? Healthy or competition, right? It really should be healthy, but competition is from day one, right? Your squad against the other squad in basic training. Your company, your platoon against the other one, your company against, then it's your branch against the other one, right? And there's always smack talk, and there's all kind of stuff like that. But you're right. Then even after the fact, I mean, look how much when you walk up to someone, especially in the Army, where we had a lot of badges and stuff. Other branches don't necessarily have that, and you look up one side down the other, right? Especially if they're infantry or they're combat arms, right?
You're doing a quick little shoulder check, checking for that tab, checking for them wings. You're checking for like that CIB, but we instead of like paying attention to like getting better in those settings and like what's being presented to us. A lot of these programs are wonderful programs with wonderful curriculum, with wonderful things, but we immediately discount them because we get in that setting and we revert back to, well, my rucksack was heavier than your rucksack, and we're not solving problems. And one of the cool things about the approach that Resilient Me is taking is they're limiting that group interaction and putting the lion's share of the work and the therapeutic on the individual, where, you get out what you put in.
Right.
You get the experience, you get the cohesion of the unit, you get the morale boost of being together and the sharing in this journey. But it's more of an, shall I say, AAR setting, like from week to week.
That's a good way to look at it.
And I think that's really neat, and I think that's going to appeal to people, veterans, because that's not as scary. People don't want to do the heavy lifting in a group setting. Like I'll go to that's one of the reasons why a lot of these self-help PTS books and workbooks, are flying off the shelves now, is because guys are willing to do. It's not that they don't want to get better, they do.
Absolutely.
But they want to do the heavy lifting. Like no one goes to the town square unless you're in Venice, California, to lift weights. When you're lifting like the heavy thing, you're not doing it in the center of the gym. You're in the back corner, like pushing yourself because you're scared of that failure. You separate yourself to do the heavy lifting, right? The same with the emotional heavy lifting. You separate yourself to do it. You want to do the lion's share of that stuff in your patrol base, in your sanctuary, where you feel good, versus like doing that in a group setting where you're like, purely hypothetically, you're sitting next to a 71 Lima.
Well, let me put it this way.
We can't compare experiences.
Right.
Not that your experience might be worse than mine because you weren't emotionally prepared to be in a firefight. Like that wasn't part.
Absolutely.
Like you were like, I got to Fort Benning, and the very first thing I learned was left, right, kill. There was no doubt what I was going to do in my career. And I was I got emotionally conditioned and prepared for that.
Yeah. And the military's good at doing that.
Like someone in a softer skill, they don't get that preparation, then they get it. So the impact of that trauma is far greater. and we shouldn't discount that. And I feel all the time, but when we sit next to each other, we do discount it. Right. And that's not helping. That's not locking arms. That's not lifting each other up. That's like diminishing.
I think, but Toby, I think we do up to a certain point. I think there's an age or a maturity level where you don't do that anymore. We're beyond that, right? I think at a younger age, we're still, right? It's all bravado, alpha male, how many deployments you got, and this. And even if you're sitting in the waiting room of the VA for hours, right? And there's another young guy, you're gonna walk. He's got the tats and got this. You're gonna walk up and start competing. But you see a Vietnam vet or someone like that or older, you're just gonna show respect. You're not going to compete with that, right? Yeah. You're not going to compete with that. Yeah, and those guys don't compete with each other, right? There's a guy that has a Navy hat on from Vietnam, and there's a guy that has a 1st Infantry Division hat in Vietnam, and they're not going to compete against each other because they realize they're beyond that, right? Yeah. But I want to get back on something you just talked about when you talked about lifting, going back in the corner or getting in your private space. I look at it this way. When something like 13 Hours comes out, the Benghazi story or Black Hawk Down, right? You're grabbing your Army buddies. You're like, yeah, let's go. We're gonna go watch them. This stuff. Something like the movie Taking Chance comes out, and you're like, no, I'm watching it at home by myself, right?
Yeah.
You're not grabbing all your Army buddies of bravado. Hey, let's all go to the front row and just bawl our eyes out at this theater, right? You're gonna be you'll go there for Black Hawk Down and hoot and holler every time they smoke somebody. But when something like a Taking Chance or Gardens of Stone or something like that comes out, where that lump's going to come up in your throat, you're doing that by yourself. You're doing that at home. You're waiting for it to come out on DVD, right? And part of that is it's that bravado. It's that we don't trust to open ourselves up that way. We're open. We don't know if we're going to get ridiculed. We don't know if we want to show those softer sides because we have to put on that persona, especially if we're still serving, if we're active, and God forbid we're young, right? I'll admit it. I couldn't understand why my dad got older. Multiple tours in Vietnam, he seemed to get more and more emotional, and now I understand it. I think I found myself to be the same way. I'll cry at a drop of a hat, but I think someone said it one time, and I figured it out. I think part of the reason why some of us get more emotional as we get older is because we understand more how precious life is. Right. And I think we've seen things that we understand. And dude, a commercial comes on sometime. I'm like, man, that got me. It's like, it's dumb,
No, I always, I share the story with people about sitting on my couch watching an AT&T commercial. And it's the AT&T commercial where like the guy's on a plane, and it's back in the day where they had like the earphones and the headrest of the seat in front of you.
Right.
And the guy picks up the phone to call home. And they got Elton John, Rocket Man playing in the background. I wept like a baby. Right, and you're like, what's going on? What's wrong with me?
But you're a big Elton John fan. I'm just saying.
Well, I do. I'm self-professed. I love Elton John. I celebrate his entire collection. But Taking Chance is a wonderful example. Not just because Kevin Bacon, plays in it. And, it's hard for a guy to take any movie serious that Kevin Bacon's in. But, we do, like that is like, I'm going to watch that quietly, and versus
the lights off,
Yeah. Yeah. The lights are off. You're up in the media room, the door's got the kids are locked out, but it's not like 12 Strong where you're just getting like, fired up.
Right.
It's not, that's a great point, and that heavy lifting that we need to do, and it reminds me of that speech that Secretary Mattis made when he was the commandant of the Marine Corps, and and he was talking about post-traumatic stress, and he said that he absolutely believes that post-traumatic stress is a real thing, and we need to address it, and we need as veterans to take forward action on it because, otherwise, we're going to create an attitude of victimization, and we're not victims. But he also identified in the following of that point that he made was the point that there's post-traumatic growth. And that is, where we become, more emotionally stronger. Mm-hmm. And, where we understand I am maturing. This thing where I have more compassion. I appreciate life more. I don't discredit things the way I did. I'm not as callous. And that's a direct reflection of that trauma. And it's great to have that post-traumatic growth, so you can break down listening to Elton John, like it's important to have it. And, like I think, we've had Chad Robichaux on the show several times. I think, his, attitudes and, approach to spiritual resiliency is, second to none. And, I think it's important that, we get, forward in the foxhole on these resiliency programs. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have Ken on the show. Like met him earlier, and just, the first thing that captured my mind is like, he's still in and he's working on the next step, the transition process. And like, we need more of that, like I don't even know what it's called now, but like, what's ACAP now for the Army?
I don't
It's
know,
like,
dude. I've been out.
Is it like Forever Soldier, whatever it is?
Soldier for Life.
Soldier for Life program. I should know that, since the guy that runs it's my former boss, Adam Rock. Shout out to the Rock, Adam style. But no, like we need to get more forward in the foxhole on resiliency, and that's why, like immediately I saw the stuff, and it's like resilient, resilient, and you gotta do it. Some of the cool things they're doing, and coming up later in the year 2019 is, first is the art project. One of the things they're doing is a storytelling project, and it's got two different things. They're going to do storytelling through music, because you just said you're a drummer. So I expect, like you to lay down some, some iambic pentameter and like spit some lyrics at us.
Of course.
But so tell us about some of the vision for the music, and then I want to get into one of my favorite things, and that's writing.
Sure. So the music, we bring in professional songwriters, and they work one-on-one with the veterans. And with all of our programs, whether it's art, music, or writing, maybe with the exception of writing, but certainly with the art and the music, we're not looking for artists or musicians. In fact, we actually would prefer that someone who is involved in the art program is not an artist. And similarly, someone who's signing up and is participating in the music storytelling program is not a musician. Because the way these programs work is, we don't want them to focus and be so hyper-focused on the technical aspects of that. So the storytelling through music, when they're sitting there with a professional music writer, the piece is, with the help of that counselor and that music writer, they're going to draw the story of those, and the music writers are the ones who are going to put those stories to music. Yeah. And so that's how the process works, and that's really the strength of these programs. You don't have to be an artist, you don't have to have an artist background or writing music background. Interesting note on the music program, it's going to be probably a 2-day workshop, and then we're hoping at the end of that, those musicians who are writing those stories, putting them to music, we're going to work with a local venue here in Georgetown and get up on a stage, and that'll be like the capstone of that workshop, where they'll get up there and they'll be able to perform those veteran stories on their behalf in a public setting. I think that'd be really cool.
That is awesome.
Well, everyone knows Georgetown likes to rock. Hold on, go ahead. I had to grab my backup device. No, like, so in our chat room, we put up Resilient Me. There's a hyphen between Resilient and Me.
Oh, is that the way it is? I was going to ask what the website was. I didn't think that was the right one.
I did it when we shared it. I did it correctly, and I think I just saw it in the chat room as without the hyphen. It requires a hyphen, but no, like I've seen this process work, not through a program, but like on a personal level. There was a young man. He's in the Central Texas area. I believe he's down the Wimberley Green area right now, and his name's Buddy Lee Dobertson. Young guy, ID blast, ocular damage, nerve damage to the eyes, slow blinding, slow attrition of the eyes, and some, obviously some other damage. But he really struggled. He really struggled in communicating. He really struggled in, like working with other people, and just, got into music and didn't have like a musical background. But he got into music, and, a friend, kind of sat beside him and kind of was like, hey, like, let's play guitar. It started off as, learning and playing guitar through the Soldiers Angels program. Man, I'm embarrassed. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway,
it was with Gibson, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Man, I can't believe I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank on the name of that program. But he ended up taking guitar lessons, right? But then this songwriter sat next to him, a friend, unrelated to any program, and just was like, hey, you should just kind of like work this through. Don't be creative. You don't have to like regurgitate someone else's thing. Like, what's your vision? What's your feelings?
Absolutely.
What's your thing? And now that guy's got an album out. Like he's really,
right.
and he's like when you look at the album and you read the lyrical content, I mean, he's diving deep, and it's like this is great stuff, and like to be able to like organize it and put it together where you have these songwriters that can help shape and like help listen and be like, hey, because man, what's the saying? Why is Hallmark in business? Because they have a better ability to put your thoughts and feelings in than you can, right? Like that's how I feel about songwriters. Like I'll hear a guy like Jamie Johnson, that song In Color, and you're like, that guy just told his grandfather's story in such a magical way.
Yeah.
Like you get choked up and you cry about it because you think about like, man, you like just took a man's lifetime and condensed it into 2.5 minutes in the most beautiful homage. And you're like, getting these professional songwriters to help guys capture that and go through that and work the wordsmithing and stuff. Yeah. And speaking of wordsmithing, they also have, the power of the pen, a writing program that's also going to be coming out. So, like obviously, doing one with music and doing one with writing. Everyone, any fan of the show knows that I dig the writing.
So what we're hoping with the writing program actually is that it'll open up avenues for these veterans to publish their work. It may be someone goes in and wants to do and expand and experience fictional writing. They don't have to necessarily. We're not requiring any direction necessarily. Right. We're really just about helping the veterans. And so maybe a byproduct of the writing workshop is they come away with, a shell or an outline of a book they want to write, fictional, non-fictional, short story, whatever the case may be. And then eventually that gets published for them. I think that would be huge.
Troy, do you know anyone involved in the veteran publishing endeavor?
Oh, I know a few people, and I also know firsthand how therapeutic it is. It is.
Yeah, no. So Troy's an accomplished, award-winning.
Really?
Or are you award-winning?
Yes, I a long time ago. Yeah, I don't think it counts.
We both are. We're both award-winning.
And published. And
that's actually how we became friends.
Yes.
Awesome. We became friends through being both awesome bloggers.
Yeah, I like that. Awesome. I'll take that adjective.
Yeah, we'll take that. No, that's how we met.
Yeah, it gets back to something Ken said. I mean, it whether it's through yoga, whether it's through art, whether it's through writing, whether it's through music, whether it's through hunting, fishing, working on cars, whatever it may be, just going to the range, whatever. But I mean, everyone, there's no cookie cutter to what people need to help them find happiness in life or find ways to relax. And it's not limited to veterans. I mean, it's anybody, right? Yeah. Anyone that works their butt off and just needs an escape. That's why people have hobbies. That's why they do things. It is, but for some folks, while they're dealing with issues, maybe their angst is a little bit higher than the normal civilian because of just, they're still, especially if they haven't been out that long, and they're trying to get used to dealing with people that maybe don't have the same level of values, morals, and urgency they do. You have to have something. You can't bottle it up. So it really doesn't matter what you do. So I think this is great, Ken, because you're offering the writing, the music, the art. It may not be fit for everybody. It may, but at least it gets someone thinking about what is it that I really like. Where do I find my happy place, right? Or
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'll give you a good example, right? When I came back in '07, when I bought the house in '05, there was a pond in the back, had some goldfish, and it was all messed up, and I had to rip it all out. And I found myself, I took 3 months off before I went back to work after I got back, and I found myself getting all into this pond and these goldfish and doing all the water and doing all this kind of stuff and doing all the landscaping around it. That was nothing I was ever into in my life. It was not anything I've ever had a passion for, cared about. I mean, nothing. And all of a sudden, it became my thing that I focused on all the time. Don't know why I focused on it, but I would imagine in hindsight, it was because it was, after seeing everything we see in combat, it was like being involved with something of growth and beauty and life and that kind of stuff. I think maybe that's why I got into it, and it's become my thing ever since. But it was not anything I ever had a thought about. I mean, I would never even think about even owning a goldfish, much less having a pond full of koi and goldfish that I do now. But so you don't even. Some people I think don't even know what they're into. They maybe have never even thought about doing yoga, but they could go do yoga, and all of a sudden find out that the meditation yoga is their thing. Where others, like say, just go hunting or fishing and do something more.
Right.
You just, I love what you're saying, because, we know it to be true. In our Facebook chat room, Big Eric Stelsel, Navy veteran, has a good point, or questioning, how to kind of bridge the gap between combat and non-combat guys, because it seems like within the VA, and this is a great point, and that's why I'm identifying them, the combat guys seem to get a forward, they get the helping hand
right
quicker in a lot of cases. And as we were discussing about 15 minutes ago, like the impact of the trauma could be like far, far greater. I remember sitting in a group session one time, non-VA related, but just in a group, just kind of sitting there taking it in. And there was like this Air Force loadmaster talking about like how, like he was scared for his life. And I'm like, dude, you're on like the back ramp of a bird that could leave.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, how scary was that? But then I put myself in his shoes, and, when he's listening on the, internal communications of that bird, and they're hearing missile lock, and he's standing in the back with nothing but a 9mm. He can't shoot at nothing.
Right.
Can't do anything. It's like that helpless, I'm going to die, like that's scary. And like we can't discount that. And I think, Eric is a great Navy veteran, one of my favorite human beings. And why? Because he's my defensive partner in hockey. That's right. Big Eric, because he's like twice my size. He's a bearded Viking right now, and we lost in the playoffs last night, but not because of his lack of effort. It's my man. But I think that's a wonderful point because, non-combat veterans do get kind of put in the back burner. And that's because, we're not looking at this in a big picture, in a broad spectrum way. We're looking at it very tunnel vision. And you are absolutely right. We shouldn't be looking at it like combat veterans have exclusivity, pain, suffering, and trauma and loss. Veterans don't have exclusivity on pain, trauma, suffering, and loss like the community does. Assaults of all different kinds happen. Car accidents of all different kinds happen. Accidents of all different types happen. Trauma happens daily. Pain, loss, suffering happens daily. And we have to find ways to do that. And we have to open that communication. We have to open that and give people a thing. The one thing that is cookie cutter. The one thing that is cookie cutter is you got to do something.
Right.
And that's one of the things. Another reason why I like what Ken and his team are doing is they are giving the veteran the opportunity to put in the reps to do it. You're gonna get out what you put in.
Yeah.
Like some guys, and if you're that guy and you're listening, you're about to get pissed off, it's because I'm talking to you directly. If you're sitting at home on your couch expecting someone to make you better, or putting something in your mouth or in your lungs is going to make you better, like that, it's not. Hey, it might make you happy,
right,
but it ain't making you better. Like if you want to get better, you got to be better. You got to do something about it. You got to get off the X.
Yeah.
You got to pick up your mat. As Christ said, you got to pick up your mat and walk. You got to go do something.
Yeah,
you know,
no one's
like,
going to bring it to you. I mean, that's
like,
what's wrong with our society today is everyone thinks someone's going to bring it to them. They don't have to work for it, right? The same people that do that are the ones complaining that, you know, everyone's getting free handouts, but they expect that, or they assume that because they're a veteran or because they've been to combat or because of whatever, that they are somehow entitled or like say they have the corner on this, right? Like you have to, you know, don't shoot your fireworks because I'm a veteran right near my house, or don't do that. It's like, you know, I know. I went there.
Oh man, that's my boy right there.
But you know, it is you know, it doesn't give you. You're right. It doesn't give you that right. It could be someone from an assault. It could be in the Army and you were in a 5-ton rollover. And you got so banged up that you got to get out of the Army, medical release. You never went to combat. It was a simple training accident. How many times have we known in our careers of the number of people killed or seriously wounded in training accidents that never stepped foot in a combat theater? Maybe they were at NTC or JRTC. Maybe they were in the back 40 of their own base and something, you know, rolled over them. I mean, I remember on Fort Hood up there at Tank Table 7, driving for an OC for a lieutenant and having to go investigate soldiers sleeping on the ground getting run over by an M1. I'll never forget that sight, seeing those sleeping bags of an M1 rolling over 2 soldiers, right? And I was a E3 driving this lieutenant to evaluate this tank unit. And I just remember looking down and you know, that was well before I ever stepped a foot in combat. And I guarantee you I've never forgot that sight or smells or anything else, nor will I ever. Yeah. And it could happen to anybody. You could happen in a 3-year stint. It could happen in a 30-year stint, you know, and none of that should be looked down upon.
So to Eric's point, though, we intentionally exclude the word combat.
I like that.
For that very reason. You know, if you look at the statistics from the Veterans Association or Administration, excuse me, you'll see that those suicide rates and a lot of those things are not strictly from combat.
Isn't the on the percentage, the stats, isn't the far majority of them those that have never been in combat of the suicides?
You're absolutely correct. The numbers are actually staggering. You know, the leading demographic right now taking their lives are the Vietnam era. All right, like that age group. That's the leading demographic within the veteran. The second is females, and the third is non-combat males, and young non-combat males. Now, the reason why I think combat males is getting such an attention is because everybody knows one. In our community, you know someone that's taken his life. So that number, when someone says 22 a day or 23 a day, you know, you immediately think of that one guy that you know, or the 2 guys or 3 guys that you know that fall in that demographic. But that's the smallest demographic or the smallest number within that demographic that's taken their lives. You know, like we talk about it all the time. You know, we cracked that out because, you know, obviously, you know, we're very passionate. We care about it. But, you know, the non-combat, you know, suicide rate is tremendously high. And, you know, we haven't been able, I think, as a force, you know, this is what, a 10-year, and the RAND study was a 5-year, and the RAND was 10 years or whatever study. Mm-hmm. You know, like we have to figure out what that is. We have to identify what that is. You know, in terms of the combat, we know what it is.
Right.
Like we know that there was a moment or there was a prolonged, you know, exposure, or there was a moment that's led to this and it's created this, you know, be it guilt or be it, you know, like a lack of understanding to the trauma. But in these other cases, we have to figure out what that is so we can mitigate it.
Soldiers are killing themselves because of divorce, you know, marital relationships, in some cases due to the pressures of their chain of command. There's just a very ton of different reasons where these soldiers are just under a tremendous amount of pressure and stress just for everyday life going on. And so, you know, we're not being sticklers. We're not asking, hey, you have to be diagnosed with PTSD.
Right.
If you have the symptoms and you're challenged in an area of your life emotionally, you know, then we want to reach out and help.
Love it. I love it. Like the, you know, when we limit ourselves to some kind of formula.
Right.
Like, you're deserving, you're not deserving. Like, I disagree. I think all are, like.
Part of the problem is too the stigmas surrounding PTSD. A lot of soldiers aren't comfortable getting a diagnosis of PTSD, and so if we limit ourselves to just those veterans and soldiers who have a diagnosis of PTSD, we're excluding a large population of people who could still need help, and we can reach out to.
Absolutely. There is still a stigma, number one, that is even though there's been many attempts to get rid of it, is one thing. But there's also real stigma, and that is anyone that wants to work in law enforcement or is in a reserve component, does work in law enforcement, they absolutely cannot go get that finding. They can't. I have a number of friends that, definitely have issues and suffer from issues. They cannot even think about being labeled with that because their career's at risk. And that is an unfortunate reality. I mean, look at what we saw with the background clearance investigation, right? They had to change the SF-86 and the clearance form because they had to eliminate and say, have you ever been diagnosed or have mental issues, but not if it's, combat related or whatever. They had to remove that because it was starting to exclude people. Yeah. They were either not going to answer honestly, and if they were going for a poly, they would be found out, and they were obviously not consciously not answering that because they didn't. It pertained to them, but they were trying to get a clearance for some reason. Yeah. So there's a realistic, even though it's a smaller population, but there's a realistic stigma that affects people that they have no choice, but not get that help.
Yeah, Sarah Lee, future co-host of the show, is always, saying things. She's got a great point. Music and art are universal languages. And I think, when we're talking about bridging gaps and we're trying to bring people together, these are universal languages. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at in the world, like, Korea, the Middle East, the Ukraine, you're going to find some common ground with music. You're going to find some common ground with art. Yeah. Like, I've never met anyone that says I only collect and appreciate American art. I will only hang an American impressionist on my walls. If you appreciate art, you appreciate art. You're like, well, that's good. That's good. You appreciate it all. Yeah. Or you have a respect for it. Maybe it's something you have more of an affinity for, but it is a universal language. And, that's a great place to start because, the nuance of trying to find like that cookie cutter, or that one thing, like it's a needle in the haystack. You got to start in a place, and music, art, great universal languages. Writing is great, because of the cathartic process that you go through when you unload and you unburden yourself of those thoughts and those ideas, those memories. Sure. That's great. I put up the Facebook link in the chat room there, so you can find Ken and his team on Facebook at Resilient Arts. So at Resilient Arts on Facebook. You can go into the chat room if you're watching this on Facebook. If not, if you're just listening to it on Facebook at Resilient Arts, just click, type that in, www.facebook.com/Resilient Arts, and it'll take you to the page. They only had 49 likes. Hopefully by the end of tonight, they got 50. Hopefully one person liked it. I'm not saying, feel any pressure, Shard, but, you should probably click that link. But Ken, is there anything else that you want to share? Like, you want to share a little bit about your experience as an officer, as an armored officer? He talked about being in Iraq playing golf today.
Oh yeah,
and I'm like, that's some BS. I was like, where were you at? You got to play golf.
I could see Qatar or Bahrain,
sure,
but
we were in Iraq at the same time, actually. So
one big sand trap.
It kind of was.
There was a bunker.
It was kind of bizarre. So we had a local market out the back side of our base camp, and it was literally all sand. When we took that base camp over, there was a local person there who had a camel and used to give us camel rides. And then lo and behold, we found out we made out of concrete pads, maybe, I don't even remember, it was a while, maybe 3-foot square concrete pads, slap some fake AstroTurf outdoor green stuff on it.
Love it.
Adapt and overcome. That's the way you do it.
Yeah. You had to chip short of the green though, because if you chipped onto the concrete, it would literally, your ball would like bounce 3 feet in the air. And it was, but it was, it was a good opportunity for the soldier.
And could trip a pressure plate. You always got to worry about that. You don't want to lose your ball there.
That's right.
Hitting an IED. So. Nice. Yeah. Well, I saw the same thing. Not the same thing in Afghanistan, but people did whatever they could. We tried to make life, life normal. I remember I was at a FOB in Gardez, and like some E8, E7 or E8 NCO had like his own rose garden in front of his little hut, his own little thing. It's like, you try to bring some kind of normalcy into all that chaos and all that crap that you deal with, and you try to bring something, some people. I remember seeing a medic group at one FOB that had one of those portable hot tubs. It was a little inflatable. They had it shipped over to them, right? And they had one of those, like a 3-person portable hot tub. And it was like, well, medics need some hot tub time. I get it, but it's not everyone had those.
I think
comforts,
our special forces guys that we worked with over there, they took this rubber material like a liner. And they took HESCO barriers and they made their own large, and I'm talking a large, not quite Olympic size, but they made a very large pool over there.
No, like that's what you got to do. I cheated, and I had contractors build me a large basin for the purpose of doing laundry, so that my Jundi could stand in the water to wash their clothes before I bought them a washing machine. That was actually purchased before the completion of the basin, which then got converted to a nice little watering hole where we sat. For some reason, when you're washing clothes, you need to be able to sit down when you do it.
You're right. But you asked me about final words or comments about me being an officer, and I'll share one quick thing with you, and it's really the crux of why I started this program up. I was a S3 or operations officer in Iraq, and I really worried, and these soldiers, I had the luxury of working inside an operations center. Soldiers were on the road every day, constantly, 19 hours sometimes, driving in that heat, out of the cupola. And, I feel like I owe them to do something. Yeah. And so this is, if I can do one thing, if I can make one, through this program, if anything, if I'd save one soldier's life or make one soldier's life better and their family's lives better because they were able to improve as a person because of these programs, I think it would be, it's all worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the prayer of every leader. Yeah. Because even though there might have been some ceremonious passing of something or signing of something or stamping of something, a real leader, a true leader, has that burden on their heart the rest of their lives. But I know for sure he's a tanker because he called it a cupola.
Yeah.
I picked up on that.
Yeah. It was a cupola. I was like, such a tanker.
Yeah. It's
such a tanker thing to say.
Yeah.
But Ken, we appreciate you taking the time out of your fundraiser, Mesquite Creek, to step into the studio and do this with us. I love what you're doing. I think it's great. Anytime I see something that someone's doing that I appreciate, I let my money do the talking. That's why I immediately wanted to make sure that I was one of the first guys to donate to you guys.
Appreciate that.
And I encourage you guys listening, go to www.resilient-me.org. We're on Facebook at Resilient Arts, and check out what they're doing. Like and investigate the plan if you're in the Central Texas area. Eric, Shard, Rob, all you guys that are in the Central Texas area, do that. Sarah, you should look into this as well, because here's a leader out there getting something started. I think rumor has it you're trying to start something. So, you know,
she's always
look
starting
and
something.
lock arms.
But she's always starting something, but starting something good.
Yeah,
That's
you know,
right.
like, you know, lock arms with like-minded people.
Yeah.
Lock arms with leaders, and
Try to make a difference every day.
Yeah. Well, that's why we do what we do, right? That's why we love having guys like Ken on. That's why we hang out with the people that we do. That's why any of us are, you know, at a moment's notice will answer the call when an old soldier, or maybe a soldier never worked for you, just someone you know calls you in help. I mean, you know, I have, you know, it is an honor when one of my former soldiers, or better yet, a soldier that's never worked for me but just knows me, reaches out. And I'm flattered beyond belief to think, wow, they trust me enough to, and even though I've been out of uniform for a few years, to still reach out and know that I'm going to give them sage advice or be the ear for them, or they're looking for help or whatever. I can't be more flattered and honored. It means more than anything else. Or I mean, there's not a badge, an award, or anything anyone could give you that would mean more than someone being vulnerable and opening up and coming to you for help. I mean, that's not the way we're bred in the military, regardless of what branch you're in. Where it's all about being tough, hua, bodies burning bodies, C-130 rolling down the strip, you know, all that kind of hua stuff. And for someone to open up and say, I need help, or, you know, I just need someone to talk to, I mean, they are opening wide. They're exposing themselves to do that to you, and they're trusting that you're not going to hurt them. And that to me, that's one of the greatest honors I can get. And so that's why it's great that you're doing this, because you know, there's a lot of organizations out there, true, but they're not all reaching they have different missions, they have different perspectives. Some limit themselves to combat vets, some don't, some limit themselves to certain whatever demographics, but not everyone can be in every place. Not everyone of them offers things like art and music and writing and that kind of stuff. And like I said earlier, that may just be the thing someone needs. Maybe they're not into the other stuff, you know, and if you could help one person, it definitely makes the whole thing worth it, right?
Yeah, sure does.
That's why we do it. It's, you know, no one's. We don't leave anyone behind. We can't reach out and find everybody. That's where you talked about earlier, Toby, that you got to get yourself off the couch. No one's gonna come knock on your door and say, hey, do you need help in this and that, whatever. You gotta. The first step is you stepping up, and I guess it's like every other cliche of every other kind of program, right? You got to, first thing you do is admit it and step up and ask for help. And hopefully someone's listening and they extend their hand out and help you out and don't just blow you off, right? Because it's not convenient for them or something. But anyways, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yep.
No, I'd say, you know, we count that as a bald man rant, but, you know, you're still bald.
I got my hat on.
Still,
sorry.
You're still bald, and I grew hair.
Yeah. Well,
we used to have these bald man rants because I've been bald for like 20 years, and recently I decided that I wanted to prove a point, and it was by choice, not by genetics.
Yeah.
But thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like I said, resilient-me.org. You can find everything you need to learn about Ken and his program there. Always www.stewandthenun.com, you know, to check out, you know, blog posts, past episodes, anything like that. Subscribe on iTunes, iHeartRadio, the Spreaker, Spotify. I know I'm missing something. You can catch us on the Twitch.
Check out stewandthenun.com. They're all on the stewandthenun.com. But be sure and like our page.
They're all there.
Follow us on Twitter and follow us on Instagram. Follow us on the IG. We do a lot of stuff on Instagram.
Instagram's getting hot.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff on
Instagram
Instagram.
page is getting hot.
That's it. So, yeah. All right. Well, hey, everyone, thank you so much. Colonel, thank you so much for joining us, and great find, Toby, and just awesome how things come together, and we, you know, just stumble across such a great program. Hopefully we've exposed it, given you shine some light on this new program you started up, and maybe bring someone to the table and you know, reach out. And if so, and if we hear about that weeks or months or whatever down the road, we'll be like, that's why we do this, right? So that's awesome if we can do that. So again, thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys.
Toby, Colonel White, thank you. And everyone, thanks for having us into your homes tonight. It is November 29th. The next time we talk to you, it is going to be December. The days are counting down. The lights need to go up. Go buy the tree and keep running up those credit cards, I guess. And But, Christmas is coming. We've got a couple shows. Obviously, we're going to take some time off near the end of December, so we have a few more shows coming up for this year. So be sure and tune in next Thursday, 8 o'clock Eastern, here on Stu and the Nun. And until then, everyone have a great week, and we will talk to you all later. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Stu and the Nun Radio. We hope you enjoyed your time with us because we have enjoyed sharing our time with you. Be sure to check out stewandthenun.com in addition to asking us questions and interacting with us on our Facebook page and Twitter. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Spreaker and Facebook Live. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Warrior Media Solutions, PoohHammer.com, Veteran Outdoors, Graybeard Publishing, and Mighty Oaks Warrior Foundation. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Thank you again, and have a good night.